Guess I'll see you in my dreams.
Yeah. Of course not.
So Nicolas Cage has been on an interesting run these past, I would say 5 to 6 to 7 years. For a long time there. I mean, he was one of the A-list actors in Hollywood. He was attached to so many big projects. And then in like the 2010s, he started to not disappear, but he started to do a lot of direct-to-video movies that had no heat around them. I think a lot of people were like, oh, the Nicolas Cage era is over. Now, with the benefit of hindsight and him talking about some of his struggles, he went through a lot of legal issues, financial issues. I think we have a better understanding of what he was going through. But I would say that in the past few years, it's kind of been like a Nicolas Cage renaissance to a certain degree. The guy has been taking on really, really interesting films. He's also been attached to some big franchises. He was in Into the Spider-Verse and voiced Spider-Man Noir. He had a critically acclaimed film come out a couple of years ago, Pig. He had a movie that was very self-reflective about his own stardom and celebrity with The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which came out last year with Pedro Pascal and him also starring in it. And now this new film, Dream Scenario, is the latest feature film from A24. It's a fantasy comedy, black comedy type of film that I think if you don't really know much about it, you won't really have an idea or concept or an understanding of what it's about. It's a little ambiguous with the story in terms of the trailer, but this is something I know we both wanted to check out, especially considering it is the latest A24 feature and they're doing really, really interesting work lately. And so we wanted to go check this out also this past weekend. So with all of that out the way, man, I will pass it over to you to get your thoughts. What did you think about this new film, Dream Scenario?
I just want to say that Nicolas Cage since 2018 has done 27 movies. Isn't that crazy? That is like insane output. Started with Mandy in 2018. Wow. Here in 2023, ended with Dream Scenarios, 27 movies. 27 movies in 5 years is insane. It really is crazy. Dream Scenario, honestly, is probably it's one of my favorite premises, I think, for a film that I had heard or seen about in a very long time. I actually didn't know much about Scenario coming into it. I didn't look at the trailer too much. I do remember kind of watching it, but I was like, dang, I don't really remember what it's about. So I come in a little bit blind. And just a very, base level what the movie is about. This ordinary guy, people are starting to dream about him. Together, everybody is dreaming about this ordinary dude, Nicolas Cage's character, kind of people around him. It's kind of how it starts, but everyone's kind of having the same dream of him entering their dreams. And I really love that premise. There's something about that. I'm like, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. What's going to happen? What's going on? And I think the first half of the film, I just really like. I think there's a lot of it's very interesting. I love the way it's shot too, by the way, but not only that, there's a lot of comedy and interesting things that you can do with that scenario, with that premise that just make for an interesting story. What does his family think about it? How is this happening? Why is this happening? And I think the film does a good job of capturing a lot of that stuff. And I think the second half of the film, it might not even be the second half. It might be the third act that it doesn't lose me, but it just doesn't feel as complete and as good as the first two acts of the film. In fact, the last act feel like they're trying to go somewhere that does feel more sci-fi. They're trying to go somewhere that does feel a little bit more. We're going to have you asking questions about this idea. This movie really is about how you choose, how people perceive you, whether it's your choice or not, how you're being perceived. And I think that's a really, again, interesting statement being made. It's a really interesting qualm about the film. But I think by the end, I think it goes interesting places. It just doesn't bring it home, I think, all the way that I expected to. And they do start to do some other things that I didn't expect. Not that they do it to the dismay of the film. It just doesn't fit as much as the rest of the film. But I think Nicolas Cage is doing tremendous work here. I don't really. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is Nick Cage's best work, that we've ever seen." I can't go that far in watching it, but what I will say is the things that he does have to do here is funny. It is really good. He does step into this character. It is you looking at this bald head, bearded, normal looking guy is funny. And he does play it very, very well. So I think this movie has a ton of comedy in it. I actually do think it has a decent amount to say, and I do enjoy it. I think they have a good film on their hands. It just doesn't bring it all the way home in the end. But I think Dream Scenario is really good. I think A24 has another good, like, pseudo quiet, really good movie on their hands.
So I will say I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. I think that it has so much to say about our current state of pop culture, our current state of celebrity fandom, what that all looks like. But before I get to that stuff, I do have to say that this movie is called Dream Scenario. And one of the things that I like about it the most are the dream sequences that take place in the movie, because as you said, this entire community, really, maybe even the entire country, they don't fully specify the scale of this, but I think we come to find out that this is happening probably to millions of people having the same dream over and over about this guy, this ordinary random guy who nobody apparently knows. He's just a professor at a college. But when you see the dream sequences in the movie, I think that they're really creative. I think that they're actually super accurate towards what dreams actually feel like. Without spoiling too much, there is one dream that's recalled by a person in the movie where she's like standing on top of a table trying to stay away from alligators crawling around her. I have had that exact dream before. It's actually crazy that I have had that dream. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, that feels like a real dream. And I think that when you see these dreams displayed, it takes you to this really surreal place where it's like, oh my God, I actually feel like that this is, calling back to a moment that I might have experienced myself in my own dreams, or it might unleash something within me that I can't fully remember, but that actually taps into something or an experience that I felt at one time during dreaming. And I think that all of that stuff was beautifully conveyed. I love those sequences, and a part of the movie kind of turns into a horror comedy because some of those dream sequences are a little bit more frightening. They do take their time. The music is just completely not present in the sequence, and you might think like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. Is this going to turn into like a murder? Like where is this going to go? There are like one or two jump scares, and so I love that about the movie. But what I do love even more is what it's trying to say about all those different things that I mentioned earlier, because this becomes, more than just about the dreams. It becomes a bit of a social satire, really, because due to the fact that all these people are dreaming about his character, he becomes famous. He becomes well known, and there's a lot of repercussions because of that. And this movie's talking a lot about what it's like to deal with fame and celebrity and status and going viral and being an internet sensation, and what that does to a person who's never had that opportunity in his life, and also a person who's very self-aware about his own presence in the world. He thinks of himself as an ordinary nobody. That's how he sees himself in this world. He doesn't think he's special. He doesn't think that he's, above anybody. He just wants to achieve a few specific things. And because he has certain ambitions, this newfound fame can possibly be leveraged to achieve those things. And so we start to see him tap into what that might look like and maybe sacrifice some of those, more pure-hearted things about him and lead him down a darker path. This movie also has a lot to say about cancel culture, which I particularly appreciated, because cancel culture and, the shit that we just see right now is just such a hot button issue. And what they start to do with that certain notion, especially, towards the middle of the movie, I just love that, to see how quickly somebody can lose everything with just a few bad moves. A few ill-advised decisions can just lead you down a very terrible path. And I think for me, I know a lot of people have been talking about the third act of the movie. It is ridiculous. It does go in a completely different place than where the first two acts were, but it actually worked for me just because I do think a lot of those sci-fi elements we're starting to see and have these conversations really about AI and technology and how people's experiences and their images and their likeness can just be co-opted into anything. The entire third act goes into that. And I really, really appreciated that, because it taps into something that isn't necessarily accessible right now, but it doesn't feel that far off from being a reality, maybe a one day, or even if it's not a reality, it speaks to things that are currently happening in modern day society, where we do see people's experiences and their trauma and their livelihood kind of be co-opted into things that can be sold and can be, valued for commerce. I think all of those things have a lot to say just about the current state of modern society. So after we saw Dream Scenario, this is a movie that I was thinking about for the next few days. I was like, wow, they're going after a lot of different topics. And for the most part, they did it successfully to me. And lastly, I'll just give credit to Nicolas Cage for the performance he gave here. I thought it was incredible. I love what he did. He had a lot of comedic moments that worked really, really well for me. And for a guy who was such a megastar in the 90s and won an Academy Award. And he was this huge action star too for a long time. Like for him to transition into this new era of filmmaking and to, you know, perceive himself and to portray this middle-aged guy going through somewhat of a crisis and to make you feel like he's kind of a nobody and somebody that's completely unassuming. I bought into it. It was one of the few times where I felt like Nicolas Cage had to go completely against like who he actually is in the public eye and dig down deep and do something totally different than what we largely see him do. So I thought it was a great performance. I thought that there was great comedy, great horror moments, and overall great commentary about modern day society. So I would absolutely recommend people check out Dream Scenario, especially if you're looking for something completely unexpected. But folks, those are all of our thoughts about the brand new A24 film Dream Scenario. If you check this movie out, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.